What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today we will be reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man, the first reboot of the Spider-Man series in 10 years. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So The Amazing Spider-Man was released in 2012, that's 10 years after the original Spider-Man movie was released in 2002, and 5 years after the critical failure which was Spider-Man 3 in 2007. The movie stars Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Rhys Ifans, Denis Leary, Sally Field and Martin Sheen, and was directed by Mark Webb. And I have to say, if you want my full views on this movie, then I would recommend you watching my Amazing Spider-Man movie review, which I did last September, because in that review, that was my first review on YouTube, and I did not really explain my personal feelings for it. I just kind of said what I thought the majority would appreciate. I weren't really very good at YouTube back then, so I kind of didn't give my personal opinion. So as I started this Spider-Man series, I thought I would just, revise my opinions on The Amazing Spider-Man, because looking back, I actually quite like it. And I'm going to defend the reasons for why I actually like this movie. However, I would recommend you watching my first review on this movie, just so you understand what I reviewed, and if there's anything I miss out, then it will probably be in that review, so don't worry guys, it will be in there. So firstly, let's just go over the main cast. Now, Andrew Garfield is perfect as Spider-Man. Not as Peter Parker. As Peter Parker, he looks like a drug addict. But as Spider-Man, because Andrew Garfield is a Spider-Man fanboy, he puts his all into the performance because he's invested in it. And because the actor's invested in it, the audience becomes more invested in it. I really like his performance here, and I think he gives it his all. Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, I really enjoy. And that's another thing, I think the chemistry between the two main actors is far superior than in the original Spider-Man trilogy, because I believe they were dating at the time. So the chemistry is organic. And as I said, you really do feel invested in the characters, and they are relatable. Both Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in this movie are very relatable characters, and you understand what they are going through. As for the other actors and actresses, Rhys Ifans, Denis Leary and Martin Sheen, they all put in really good performances in their respected roles. They are a little underdeveloped. I felt like we could have had, a bit more character development for them. But they put in good performances. They're strong actors, so it does work. The only actor I have a problem with is Sally Field. And you can call it her performance, or you could call it the writers. But they just make out Aunt May to be some whiny bitch, which just nags Peter Parker all the time. There's no wisdom there. There's no actual advice that she gives. She's pretty pointless in the movie. So I felt like they could have worked on that a bit. Out of all the actors and actresses, I feel Sally Field gives the worst performance. And sorry, Sally Field, if you were invested in this, but I just don't buy it. Your character's really horrible, and it's probably the worst Aunt May we've had on screen so far. Another thing that I have actually started to like in the last year is the darker and grittier tone The Amazing Spider-Man goes with. So this movie came out in a time which I like to call the Nolan era, whereby all comic book movies that came out directly after the Dark Knight trilogy went for a darker and more realistic tone, because they believed that comic book characters had to be grounded because people can relate to them. And while that works for Batman, you could say that doesn't really work for Spider-Man. However, I like the darker tone. It feels, as I said, a lot more grounded. It feels more realistic. And I have to admit, when you see Spider-Man working on his costume and working on the mechanisms to create his costume, you can kind of understand that this is just a really poor kid and he can't really afford that much, so he kind of gets by with what he can make. So I actually, I like how they do the Spider-Man costume is made out of like spandex. I think that's quite, unique. I actually like the Spider-Man suit in this movie. I know a lot of people don't like it. They say it looks like a basketball, which it kind of does. However, I kind of like it. I think, he's a poor kid. That's what he'd be wearing, because he's a poor kid. He can't afford the expensive, made suit which the original Spider-Man trilogy did. So I kind of, even though I liked the original trilogy's more nostalgic and you could say campier atmosphere, I prefer the grittier atmosphere because it does give us something which we have not seen before or since, and that is a more realistic, down-to-earth Spider-Man. And you know what, they pull it off. In this movie at least, they do pull it off. And I was invested in it and I wanted to see where it was going to go. So I like the grittier atmosphere, what can I say? And probably the last thing I just want to point out is the action. Now, the original Spider-Man trilogy, the effects and the action still hold up well. And as I said, I like, how they use practical effects and CGI combined. Although in The Amazing Spider-Man, I believe Sony gave them a bigger budget, so they have more to work with, they have more money to spend on the effects and choreography. And it really does work. This Spider-Man is a lot more agile and acrobatic than his predecessor. And I have to admit, the standout scene is the school scene. Now, this is a brilliant and intense action scene. You've got Spider-Man, doing all his acrobatics, running around all over the place. And the Lizard, who is just as agile. It's a brilliant scene. And I don't understand why loads of people, including myself to an extent, walked out of this movie kind of thinking, oh, it weren't that good. Because the action is actually really good. It's really enjoyable. It's well done. It's well executed. And I have to admit, I like the action scenes because I like the Lizard, We're probably never going to see the Lizard on the big screen again. So seeing the Lizard here, is my favourite Spider-Man villain. So just to see the Lizard is just awesome. What can I say? It's just awesome. Awesome! So in conclusion, The Amazing Spider-Man is a reboot, yeah, but it gives a reimagining of the character. I like the grittier atmosphere. I think that is welcomed. It's a contrast to the kind of colourful atmosphere of the original Spider-Man trilogy. I really enjoy Andrew Garfield's performance. I think he's a superior Spider-Man to Tobey Maguire. The rest of the acting cast, with some exceptions, do really well. They're 100% invested in their performance. And Mark Webb, he gives a good direction. I actually like The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I think it was, it weren't the greatest, but it was, I think, a success. It's one of the better Spider-Man movies. And that is why I give The Amazing Spider-Man a 7 out of 10. And while that might not seem that high, Spider-Man 3 only got a 6 out of 10. So to get a 7 out of 10, The Amazing Spider-Man did really well. And I really did think that they were going to go somewhere positive with it. Then we got The Amazing Spider-Man fucking 2. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed my Amazing Spider-Man movie review. Please be sure to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And please, I would recommend that you check out my other review of The Amazing Spider-Man. It doesn't look very good. The quality is quite bad because it was my first ever video on YouTube. But it does explain some of my other opinions on this movie, some of the more negative aspects on it. So that there'll be a link to that down in the description below. I really would recommend you check that out. And I will see you in the next one. See ya!